back to another episode of the Plants and PRs podcast. My name is Tyler Scott Egan, or Big Daddy, or the Vegan Egan. It's a new one. I'm starting to embrace it a little bit. I think we should roll with it though. It kind of works. My last name's Egan. I'm a vegan. Vegan Egan. Kind of works, kind of flows. Shout out to my boy Kevin Gilligan for that one. For those of you who don't know me, who are new here, new to anything of mine, any of my content, I am a NASM certified personal trainer. I am a volleyballer. I am an athlete. And I'm just somebody who cares about health and well-being. Wow, that's really bad positioning. If you're watching on YouTube right now, you'll see that I have a really mean glare coming in hot. So just had to adjust that. But yeah, I'm a huge advocate of health and fitness, health and well-being. Just take care of yourself. I've gone through some of my own struggles, and it's really come to light how important that is to me. So I want to voice my opinion about it, which is where this podcast comes into play. It gives me the opportunity to share my journey, share the things I've learned, hopefully help people in their journey along the way, because in my experience so far, it's gotten more fun in the health and fitness space for me. The more people I get to share my journey with, the more people I get to interact with, the more people I see going through the same thing, bounce ideas off people, all that stuff. So that's what led me here. That's what this is about. And yeah, I just want to help more people, and I felt like the podcast was a good way to do it. So if you've been following along so far with the podcast, for the 5 of you, I appreciate the shit out of you. In not the last episode, the episode before that, a friend of mine, I believe his name is Juan, corrected me on some misinformation I put out there. Now, I wouldn't say it was completely complete misinformation, but he helped inform me on the thermic effect of food, how each macronutrient actually plays a bigger role depending, like protein will burn more calories than carbs or fats will. Stuff along those lines. He sent me a good link. If you go to that YouTube video and go down in the comments, he put the link that he got his information from, and I started combing through it, and it was pretty good stuff. So for anybody who's actually interested, check that out. And I just want to say, that's why I have said in the first few episodes to do your own research. Don't just take my word for it. I have a good idea of a lot of these things, but I do enough research to understand, and then I forget. So there's a good chance that I could be wrong, and I don't mind being corrected. I would actually encourage people to correct me. So sorry for the long intro. Sorry for all that. Thank you for sticking with me here. Today, I want to get into why every muscle matters, hence the name of the episode. For people who've been following me for a little bit now, you'll notice that I went from trying to do a lot of strength training and almost kind of powerlifting style training, if you actually followed along that much. But I went from that to more stability, mobility work. I started seeing a physical therapist. I've been going to a physical therapist on and off since last July, because I've had numerous amounts of muscle imbalances in my body. And that's where the topic of today's episode comes from. Why every muscle matters. So picture that you have a table, trying to think of a name of any table. Every table has 4 legs, right? Picture the top of the table is your muscle, your joint. And then the 2 legs, so the 2 legs on the left are muscles on one side of your joint, and then the 2 legs on the right are the muscles on the other side of the joint. I'm going to draw something out real fast for those of you on YouTube. Hold your horses. So yeah, like I said, you have the tabletop is your joint, and then the 2 legs on one side is a muscle, the 2 legs on the other side is a muscle. Kind of like your arm, for example. Your upper arm is, you have the bone, all that stuff, you have the shoulder joint, and then you have the bicep and the tricep on each side of it, right? Those are opposite antagonist muscles. It's kind of the same concept of what I'm going for here. The joint, the tabletop is in a set position, and then you have the muscles on each side. So if you have a muscle imbalance on either side of that, it can cause all kinds of weird things to happen. if that's making sense to you. And I'm gonna hold this picture up for my friends who are watching on YouTube, and this is gonna look so wrong. So please remember, I'm not an artist, and try to be an adult. So you got here, you got the joint right down the middle here. See that? And you got muscle on this side and a muscle on this side. It definitely doesn't look right. But if one muscle is shorter or weaker, then the other muscle is going to compensate. So, for example, when I first got back into the gym, I had really internally rotated shoulders, meaning that if you're watching on YouTube again, you'll see it. But my shoulder was being pulled down this like towards the midline of my body by my internal rotators, which are, in this case, the primary ones are your chest and your lats. What was happening was those muscles were very overactive because gravity's always pulling us down. We're all sitting at desks all day, hunched over and shit. The problem was, because of all that, I didn't work my external rotators to balance the equation. So what happened was, because of that internal rotation, when I would do pressing motions, I couldn't get my shoulders in a safe and functional position to be able to press the weights up. So what happened was I had a shoulder impingement. I guess that would be, because I'm not a physical therapist, so I'm not 100% sure on all this stuff. I would love to be corrected if somebody knows more than me. But I believe because my shoulders are so internally rotated, like my joint would pinch up in the top of the ball and socket of the shoulder. Could be wrong. I'm not 100% sure. Sue me. But so yeah, that was what was happening. I had internally rotated shoulders, and my external rotators weren't strong enough to compensate for that. So it led to a muscle imbalance. Overactive internal rotators, underactive external rotators, and then a shitload of shoulder problems. I had scapular winging on this side. If you guys don't necessarily know what that is, your shoulder blade is supposed to sit fixated on the back of your rib cage. And if your muscles aren't working properly, some of the stabilizing muscles like your serratus anterior, your rhomboids, when you go to lift your arm above head like this, your shoulder will wing off your scapula. And that was actually happening to me on my left side. My right side I had impingement. My left side I had scapular winging. All because I had a muscle imbalance at my shoulder joint. My internal rotators would compensate for my external rotators, if you guys are following me on that. So it led to all these shoulder problems, and it was just a mess. It didn't have to be. The problem was I started following a generic cookie cutter program. It's called Kino Body. It's still a thing. If you see it, don't fucking fall for it. I'm not saying that stuff doesn't work, but everybody's different, and we should be treated as such. We all have different day jobs. We all do different things at school. We all have different anatomy. Our bones, our joints are structured differently, which means we all have different things we need to work on. So because I was so heavily focused on working my lats, working my chest, my internal rotators, my lats and my chest muscles, pulled me in and just put my shoulders in a really shitty spot. I've since then worked on my external rotation, my rotator cuff muscles, my rear delts, things that externally rotate your shoulder, to strengthen that, to fix my posture, to get my shoulders in a better and safer position. I've also worked on thoracic mobility, mobility in my lats, strengthening my serratus anterior. Not that you guys would necessarily know what that means, but if you do, cool, because that's some stuff you could work on. But that's why it's so important that's why every muscle matters. Because on each side of your joint, you have two muscles that oppose one another, or antagonist muscles. Like your biceps, I kind of started to hint at it at the beginning of the episode. The biceps and the triceps really don't go hand in hand with the shoulder. I guess they would be more elbow. But the biceps and the triceps are antagonist muscles on your arms. So you want to be able to work those and stretch those in the same fashion so that they have a length-tension relationship on each side. What happens is, if you don't work on the opposing muscles, so for example, if I didn't work on my external rotators for my shoulder joint and just kept pounding away at the chest presses, the lat pull downs, the chin ups, my shoulder impingement would have gotten worse, is my guess. And my body would continue to compensate in ways that it shouldn't, just because I didn't correct those muscle imbalances in my body. Another good example that is very common, and it happens to me, that's why I say it's common, I see it in people, is tight hip flexors. Because we're sitting down like this, our hip flexors are naturally active. You have your hip flexors and your hip extenders. Your hip flexors will take your picture, if you're looking on YouTube right now, picture that this hand that I'm wiggling right now is where my hips end and my torso begins. And this hand is my torso. Your hip flexors will flex at your hip and bring you down, which is kind of the position of a seated, when you're seated. So when you're seated, you're on that 90-degree angle and your hips are flexed. So what that does is that shortens those muscles and puts your glutes and your hamstrings, or your glutes on more of a stretch, basically making them underactive, which is why you see me preach so much on Instagram. If you follow me there, if you don't, you should go check the link below and give me a follow. But that's why you'll see me on Instagram talk about why I say guys, because a lot of guys ignore it, but people in general should work their glutes more. Because if your glutes are the most powerful muscle in your body. I mean, I don't care how big of a fucking peach you got. You can have a little peach, you could have a Kim Kardashian peach. I don't care which peach you got. That shit's still the most powerful muscle in your body. And if it's not, you got a serious problem. You generate a lot of power from your ass. I'm not even kidding. And that's why I hint at it, that most guys should be doing those things more to improve their bedroom performance. It's kind of a joke, kind of serious, but back to my original point. Sorry, I just had to say all that. When you're in a seated position like I am right now, your glutes are on more of a stretch. Your hip flexors are naturally, because of the position of your body, in a flexed and shortened position. So what happens is if you go to squat, let's say you hit the gym after a long day at work, let's just say a 10-hour shift, right? You're sitting down 8 of it, and you go to hit squat, and you don't stretch, you don't warm up, you don't do nothing, and you have tight hip flexors. What may happen is when you go to squat down, just picture this hand, if you're watching on YouTube, is your torso. Just because your hip flexors are overactive, it might actually pull your torso forward more. So if you are one of those people who at the bottom of squat, your torso starts to fall over, that could be the problem. I'm not saying that is the problem. There could be a bunch of problems or a bunch of different reasons for that. That's just one of the options. And another example of why every muscle matters, because you have, again, that joint in the hip flexor position, excuse me, you have your hip joint, your hips as a whole, and you have the hip flexors on the front of your what's this thing called? Your hips on the front of your pelvis. There we go, the pelvis. You have the hip flexors on the front of your pelvis, and then your glutes on the back side of your pelvis. And those they're antagonist muscles that work opposite each other to keep your pelvis neutral almost. And what you'll actually see is if you sit down too long, what you might end up starting to see is that you'll overarch your back and your glutes will be completely inactive. So if you have a lot of lower back pain, you'll see, I see it a lot from the physical therapists I follow online, and even from my physical therapist. The first thing they do when it comes to back pain is they screen like your hamstring glute complex to see where that's at. When I first went to my physical therapist, he had me doing so many glute exercises, it wasn't even funny. And I thought I had strong glutes, and I did not. They were barely firing. I'm not even kidding. And it fucking sucked, but I'm on the other side of it now. So, yeah, I think I kept that condensed enough and explained it enough, and I have my really bad drawing. This does not look right, but it is what it is. I don't care. I hope that made sense to you guys. I hope that helps you understand a little bit more why every muscle matters. If you want me to go into more detail on specifics, like how to improve your shoulder internal, external rotations, let me know. I've actually been thinking about doing a YouTube video on rounded shoulders to begin with. There's a bunch of them out there. I just wanted to do it to help my friends. But guys, seriously, if you have any kind of postural imbalance, I highly recommend you go check out a physical therapist if you can. If not, there's a shitload of videos on YouTube. But yeah, so guys, that's pretty much today's episode. I hope it all made sense to you, because this is something that is like I can't even begin to put it in words how, in my personal opinion, this is so important. You know, I don't know about other people when they first started their health and fitness journey or started going to the gym again. But for me, when I first started going, it was like, all right, I want to get bigger chest. I want to get wider back, blah, blah, blah. And when you do just those things, it will lead to, it could potentially lead to a lot of muscle imbalances. Everybody's genetics are different. I, unfortunately, had already started to lose a lot of my postural structure, I guess you could say, before I even got into the gym. So then when I started hitting those internally rotating movements hard, it just started to lead to a lot of bad issues. And I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy because it sucks. I'm telling you guys, if you focus on the little muscles, if you focus on the stabilizing muscles, things like that, like your aches and pains, problems at your joints, they'll begin to go away. I only say that because from my personal experience, it's happened. You know, I've been working with some of my friends, and I'm gonna give a shout out to my boy Ralph. We've been working together for a couple months now, and the biggest thing that I saw after a couple months of working together was his posture got so much better, and it was fucking incredible. And all it took was a lot of, I shouldn't say all it took, because he put some hard ass work into it, but you know, doing the right things, working the right muscles, stretching the overactive muscles, things like that really do go a long way. And I can promise you, if you focus on the little muscles, if you focus on every single muscle, you'll begin to feel a lot less pain, and you'll move better, you'll feel better, and eventually you're going to start looking better. So I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. If you like it, share it, please. If you have anything I can improve on, anything you want me to talk about, let me know. I'm open to criticism. I'm open to expanding my topic horizon. So please feel free to reach out. You can find me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. That'll be down below if you're on YouTube. It'll be somewhere if you're on Podbean. And then I'm hoping by the end of next week, I guess. Today's 4/21, so April 21st, Tuesday. I'm hoping within the next week I have it up on iTunes, and then from there, Spotify. So thank you guys again for stopping by, and I'll see you on the next one.